Okay, we are rolling.
Great.
Yeah.
Good morning, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really
thank you so much.
To agree.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been following your stuff on LinkedIn for quite a while, and there's always some very interesting things coming about. So what happened is we kind of ran out of our backlog of podcasts that we had recorded, and we're now trying to find new people to talk to. And I said, well, I want to speak to you because I'm curious as to what you are doing. So I think let's start with the introduction. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you are doing.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Adam Formica. I live in Norway, actually from the United States, and I am Chief Science Officer at Sensonomic. So we're a Norwegian AgTech company. So we primarily build software for growers to achieve operational excellence. A lot of what I'm writing on social media is about the general market. We have a grander vision. Once we have a lot of growers on the platform, we can start to say bigger things about the market. But right now I'm just using public data to give some pointers.
Okay. So what's your background? How did you get involved with all of this, and where in the States are you from?
Oh, yeah. So I'm from Boston. Go Celtics. I've been away for a while. So first in the UK, where I did my studies at University of Oxford in geography. And I got very interested in questions around environmental conservation, and agriculture is one of the things that we do that has the biggest impact on the planet and our resources. So I moved into the agricultural space, trying to unlock efficiencies using computational modeling, and met some Norwegians that had founded a company doing very similar things in the commercial space. That's how I got involved. And then specifically with fresh fruit, it's a very interesting crop or set of crops because they're very high value, they're very sensitive. And so we thought that, the kinds of tools and technologies that we can bring to bear can make the most difference there.
Okay, it's been very interesting looking. I looked at your website, and the Sensonomic agribusiness performance platform. It seems extremely interesting what you guys are doing in taking into account the weather, the way things change, and then what that does to the markets, and what the markets, how one can expect changes on your product from the market. It's incredibly interesting how you take into account all these various things and produce something like what we've been seeing I've been seeing it on LinkedIn. So I would imagine this is hugely valuable to the growers that you are working with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to kind of fill it in with an anecdote, I've been writing a lot about El Niño. We're coming out of El Niño now, but El Niño southern oscillation in the Pacific obviously affects the temperatures of the ocean, and specifically it brought temperatures up by Peru in the coastal area in the north. And we just saw huge impacts this year with table grapes. We saw yields fall in Peru by 30%, and we saw shorter cycles because it was warmer, and then that gave less time for the grapes to grow. And so there's a lot of anxiety around the climate, and growers know that they can't continue to use the same models or ways of working and expect to achieve accurate results when it comes to estimating, what can I expect for my crop this year? So that's why we know that we need to kind of improve on these existing methods, production equations in Excel and all of that, and start to integrate with weather stations, a mix of ground stations and satellite data to kind of inform the models with weather.
Just please correct me if I'm wrong. Did you grow up with the agricultural background?
No, I came from a place that was very far away from ag. So, out east, we used to have ag, and then it moved west because that's where the fertile land was. So farming for me was always a kind of an exotic thing. People had hobby farms around in the state of Massachusetts, kind of more small scale, local. There's still some in the river valleys in the center of the state, more commercial ag. But yeah, one of the most exciting parts is learning about this ag world and getting to meet the growers.
And that was going to be my question, as to I think a lot of people in their career start out with a novel idea of that they want to change something and make something for the better. So like what you've said, you wanted to look at the climate impact and all this kind of thing. So what was the biggest eye opener for you in terms of agriculture and what you wanted to do and what you thought was happening and what is actually not happening? If I hope you understand me correctly. So because
that's a really good question.
A lot of people come from a different background into the ag space with this preconceived idea, and then it completely changes when they see how it actually works on the ground.
Yeah, I guess we get told all these myths about agriculture. And, we see, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, the red barns, the cows, kind of like how small farms look in Norway, where I live. You start to realize this is where these myths have come from. And, we perpetuate that system here in Norway through heavy subsidies and a lot in Europe. That's how these smaller farmers can survive. But when I went to Peru and to some extent Chile, I really was confronted with the full scale of commercial industrial agriculture. It really dispelled those myths for me. Also through prior work, being on palm oil plantations in Malaysia too. And you realize that you have thousands of people working on thousands of hectares towards a common goal to achieve a certain level of production. And that they're using incredible amounts of technology, incredible attention to detail, and that the idea that there's just a family farm with a few people running it is doesn't match the reality for a lot of the production in the world that I've experienced with both fruit farming and also with oil palm.
And other things like where people saying, well, I know that it's a lot of these things people, they latch onto a statement somebody made. Somebody would say, agriculture is destroying the climate.
Yeah.
Things like that. From what you've seen from these commercial farms, and what's been your perception from that? And did it change? Did it not change? And please feel free, the stage is yours. You can say
these are good questions. I would say that agriculture is just another way to make a living. And a lot of the people that I've met, they want a job close to home, and they like where they live. And so they, live in parts of the world where they can grow oil palm efficiently, or they can grow grapes efficiently. Because they're blessed with, the climate or the water. And I would say that, there's a lot of ways that we're, appropriating resources, and agriculture is one of them. But, there's no ill will involved. It's just people trying to make a living through growing food. So I would say, there are environmental impacts, and we can try to reduce them. But anything at that scale that's having that big of a dent on, human sustenance and the economy is going to exact some costs on the environment. And so I guess our goal with our company, and also like a personal goal, is just try to reduce that without, demonizing anyone in the industry or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. That's a great answer. Dewald, he says the very probing questions. So there you go. Well answered.
I'm curious. It's because I'm curious, and somebody always said, ask the obvious question because that's going to get the correct answer.
Yeah.
So tell us more about Sensonomic. How did it develop and how things going? And I see on your website it mentions table grapes, olives, coffee, and top fruit. But I see on LinkedIn that there was discussions about avocados as well. So tell us more, please.
Yeah, thanks. Easy questions now. So I guess with Sensonomic, we started about 10 years ago. I've been with the company about 7 years. We, I guess, launched as a product company, 3 years ago, and decided to focus on high value perishable crops. So hence the focus on things like olives and table grapes. Olives were a little close to home. We had closer to home. We had a project in the south of Portugal with what they call these super high density olive production systems. And so we built a product around olives, and then we met up with a Chilean advisor for table grapes, and we started to adapt the product for grapes. And then on the way, we did a little bit of work with coffee in Brazil, and different palm fruits like apples and pears in places like Argentina. The core of our business right now is with table grapes and with olives.
Well, olives is the odd one out from everything that you've listed so far, because a lot of people, when you brine them, you're basically preserving them, and the other way around, you're making oil, which is also, if you store it correctly, it will preserve itself.
Yeah, no, so it's very different the way the markets move, right? Because you have like a 1 or 2 year storage period, and of course the acidity will go up, and you can't always sell as extra virgin and all of that. Yeah. So there's particularities there, but when it comes to the harvest, it's the same idea, right? Like that you have 24 to 48 hours to get the olives to the mill to crush them, and you're looking at the maturation of the olive from fruit set to harvest. In grapes, we talk about veraison. As our advisor says, it's when the grape hits puberty and starts to change. And with olives, there's a similar process, right? So it'll stop growing in size and weight, and then it'll change in composition. So we look at an index called fat to dry matter. It's very similar to bricks that the grape growers are watching to know when to harvest.
And avocados.
Yeah, and with avocados, it's the density of the avocado that's that index, right, for the maturity. But so I guess the similarities have to do with the fact that the harvest needs to be very well executed, and very careful attention needs to be paid to the timing, which is why we have, harvest planning module, and we're estimating how that is changing.
So how does is it the app? Is it the program? How does it work? What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's a platform. It's a software platform. So we refer to it as a platform, and it's broken up into two parts. So we have a mobile app where the growers collect data in the field. So we're not actually selling any hardware with the app. We have integrations with certain hardwares like the refractometers from Atago, some of these digital calipers with Bluetooth. But we are, through that app, collecting data from the field. And then the second part is a dashboard on the web. So you can look at the data that comes in real time, and then we have analytics and algorithms that we serve up, estimations of the yield, as well as when the harvest will be ready by block in your operation.
Interesting, very interesting. There's quite a few of those kind of systems coming onto the market at the moment. We've worked with a South African company called Aerobotics that's got where you can simply take your phone and take a picture of the fruit, and it gives you sizes, and it will also help with yield estimations and things like that.
So we're in a similar space. I mean, I guess differences would be that we're not bringing in technology from above. we're meeting growers where they are. A lot of growers want magic.
Always.
It's the kind of image classification algorithms, computer vision has come a long way, but there's still a lot of background noise. So growers want, like in the pack house, they have these great softwares for sorting based on quality, but that's a controlled environment where you control the background, and you don't want to have to hold up a sheet of white paper each time. And also we found that with these technologies, like they're really good at estimating size and counts, but then you need to know agronomy to get to an accurate estimation, because it's not just based on the number of bunches you have or the weight of the bunches. It depends on how you manage, and also the environment, the weather. So yeah, I mean, we've talked to a Peruvian grower, and they said it was great to work with one of these companies. They come in and they say they just take a video, and they said they got 99% accuracy, whatever, of the bunch count. But then when it came to the yield estimation, it was 30% off. So we're really trying to invest as well as in the kind of data capture, the agronomy that's needed to get to the accurate estimation. That's
the thing. The consistency and the accuracy is in any of the AgTech things that we've seen. That is where the magic lies. Yeah.
So I mean, growers are always asking us about our accuracy. I would say, I mean, I can quote some numbers. So we estimate different things. So the volume, so kilos per hectare. And I would say in the north of Peru, under really challenging conditions with El Niño, where I said there are the faster cycles and less time for the grapes to develop, we were able to get within a 10% margin of error, 95% accuracy. And that was shortly before harvest, because it depends when. An accuracy further out that's higher is more impressive than closer to harvest. But, it's something as simple as just saying, hey, go out and measure the weight of the berry before you make your estimation. Don't use last year's weight, because it's not representative of this year's. And that was like a revolution, right? And then we were able to get to a more accurate number. And then when it comes to timing, we were working with a grower in Nayarit in the south of Mexico, where they're just starting with grapes. Mexico is trying to get in on Chile's window. So they're growing in the south now to have earlier grapes on the market, because they're closer to their client in the United States than Chile is. But there we were estimating, in a place no one's grown grapes before. And we were within plus or minus 1 week when it came to predicting, week by week, when is this block of, 5 hectares going to be ready to harvest for this variety. It was mainly Timson was the variety there.
So what interesting things are you seeing in the table grape industry from your clients? And I'm not sure, do you work with any clients in South Africa, Australia, India, and those places as well?
We're watching those markets very closely. So our main clients are right now in Peru, in Spain, Mexico, and California. I mean, what I would say is I'm seeing a consolidation in the industry. So we see like Unifruti and Frutura buying up companies, and we see an increasing level of professionalization, through that. That these companies are kind of demanding that they use more technology and that there's more transparency. We're seeing more private equity enter ag. So we're seeing, investors from, the northern countries putting money into the southern countries, trying to diversify risk in their portfolio, given what's going on with inflation right now, and ag is decoupled from other assets. So it's a really attractive one. But again, you have new demands when you have investors in New York and London, or even places like Rio de Janeiro, wondering what's going on in ag, which has traditionally been very opaque. So yeah, I would say consolidation, more private equity moving in, increasing adoption of technology. There's lots of things to say, but those are just a few.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Very interesting. Okay, and looking down the road for Sensonomic, what do you guys seeing? Are you planning to develop in any particular direction, or what are the trends looking like going forward?
Yeah, I would say we're trying to work, so both deepen our knowledge within the crop systems that we work with, so table grapes, olives, avocados that we talked about, and then also trying to broaden at the same time to demonstrate that the platform that we have has wider relevance for the most of the food system. A lot of work has been done on the major grains. We've kind of carved out a niche with fresh fruit. There's a lot of these companies in the United States that are looking at wheat and maize and those kind of things. So I think it would be, diversifying there. And then also trying to get more actors into the mix. I talked about investors, for example. There's also the suppliers to the ag companies. And there are, shipping companies and then retail, obviously. And so it all starts with the grower, and the grower has very valuable information. And if the grower makes that information more transparent to other actors, they should be, or at least have the opportunity to be rewarded for that. If you're a genetics company and you're licensing varieties and you want to know the performance of those varieties, then, if the grower can share some sort of limited view of their operations through a platform like ours, then, those varieties companies can give them some kind of benefits, that sort of thing. And the same goes for any actor that's, depending on the grower, more favorable terms.
And I'm looking at the stats you share on LinkedIn, which is always interesting for me. It's like, where do you gather the information from? Because like for instance, the blueberry one I'm seeing at top, Peru blueberry exports by adoption of patent varieties in 23-24. I know a lot of these companies keep their cards pretty close to the chest and don't like to show all the stats. So how do you find all the info that you've got on hand?
Yeah, so I've been courting controversy a little bit because I am aware. Part of it is to get in the face of the growers and to get their attention, to show that we know things about their business. Sometimes you can go a little too far. Sometimes you can make some mistakes. You get quickly corrected. The data are coming from public sources. I would say Peru is quite open compared to other countries when it comes to publishing data. You can see that with Provid. Manuel Ezaga has taken a very open stance on that, the director of Provid. I would say that, or I don't know if director is the official role, but someone involved. We are gathering those data from public sources, I can say. A lot of it has to do, with things that the countries are tracking anyway. And there's a whole cottage industry that's developed, at least around Peru, where people are publishing statistics because, the official agencies aren't putting out so many reports. And I would say, for the remainder, we're sourcing data from public weather stations, from government agencies, not just in Peru, but Chile, South Africa. I've been writing about a little bit. United States is quite open with its data. And so with this, you can start to piece together, a picture of the market and understand where volumes are going over time, and then also the adoption of new varieties, which is very interesting to our clients.
Especially the new varieties on table grapes. There's been some incredible things happening there.
Yeah,
it's actually a field. It's a field that we work in quite a lot. Right now, we're actually helping a company looking at all the places in the world that they have new varieties. So it sounds like we are very much working on different parts of the same industry. But I have a question, and that is, does some of the information come from information gathered by your clients? As you were saying, go out and measure the weight of a berry. So some of the stats are directly from them.
No, absolutely not. We'd never share client data without their permission. So
no. I mean, but do they provide it? Do they provide some of the data or not?
There's a distinction here to make. So the clients are providing the data into the Sensonomic platform, and they are getting analytics that are private to them. And then what's being said publicly is from other sources of information, not from the growers. But what we're trying to do is paint a picture of a future where if growers were able to share some things, then it would be able to coordinate the market. And we're just seeing increasing competition, like people are kind of moving into each other's windows, and that we need to make sure that there's less price volatility, for example, with peaks and troughs in supply. So the kind of vision is that, if we get more growers on board and sharing information, that we can avoid those types of things and give the market and all the actors within it a heads up. But that's with kind of in parallel.
But luckily with your information that you've got on your system, you can quickly correlate to see, okay, now the public source is off. The public source might be wrong in what they're putting out to the public.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not usually the public or the data aren't misrepresenting. There's often just confusion around how the data are collected. And there's also delays too. So I think we usually find there's consistency between, what our growers are saying and the platform from public sources. But there, I guess, can be some misunderstandings. But we generally try not to reference anything about what the growers are doing when we put out that information. It purely comes from what we can see publicly.
Cool.
But
so the data that you have it's gathered from public sources and from growers. But looking at the way you put it together, it can be of great help to people in the market. So that people know how much is coming or how little is coming, when it's coming and when there'll be breaks. So where are most of your clientele? Are they mostly growers, or do you have some people in the market space?
We're talking to people in the market space, but we're really focusing on growers because our platform right now is adapted, for field technicians to enter data in the field and get estimations in different phases, closer and closer to harvest, to plan and execute the harvest efficiently. But I guess we're having side conversations with people who are interested in business intelligence. So I talked to a business intelligence outfit from a group of companies in Peru, for example, and within their portfolio, they have agribusinesses. So they're interested in things like retailer performance. They're interested in things like substitutes and availability of other things on the market while their grapes are being shipped, and how that will affect price. I mean, everyone's focused on Chilean cherries and how is that affecting grapes in China, for example. So they're interested in not only what's going on from the export side, but also from the import side. And so we're starting to link together data, downstream in the supply chain with that kind of upstream data. And then we're also talking to investors, or the companies that provide credit to these agribusinesses, and helping them understand the, I guess, companies that they're extending credit to. And I mentioned that kind of opaqueness, so they appreciate learning more about performance of the different companies. But squarely focused on growers for the moment.
So is there anything, any interesting trends that you've seen from these countries that you support? Like you've just mentioned, like cherries from Chile into China, that you're allowed to talk about, that could be quite interesting, because because often, like right now, is our avocado season mostly in Southern Africa. So what kind of interesting things have you seen that could be looking down the line? Because often you get growers that say, right now, avocados is not working for me, or there's a new area. Like what's happening in South Africa is there's quite a few of the avocado growers moving down south towards the Western Cape where we are. And that puts them in a later bracket. It's either very, very early or very late, depending which way you look at it. But they should come into harvest from, let's say, October, November, when there's no other avocados in South Africa.
Yeah.
What interesting things are you seeing?
Well, I mean, in that vein, I was mentioning, the expansion of the window. The countries are very conscious of their window. So, I mean, Peru in Ica in the south, which is kind of the main heartland of grapes in Peru, they started their pruning of production 1 or 2 weeks earlier this year. So then when harvest comes around, they're a little bit earlier so they don't conflict with Chile. And they're very conscious of that. Chile had an amazing year this year, both in terms of production, but also price. And so I think they're conscious of that. You see, a greater focus also on quality in Peru, because I saw an estimate out last week. They're probably going to ship 77 million 8.2 kilo boxes next year, which is more than any other country is going to ship. So, I mean, clearly the market's ability to absorb that may not be possible at the same price now. And so there's going to be winners and losers when it comes to quality. I mentioned the expansion south in Mexico. You're going to see Mexican grapes getting in earlier on the market, competing with the end of the Chilean window. And I think we're seeing more and more that grapes are becoming a commodity available 52 weeks a year. And I have to credit Coco Salgado on that. But it seems to be true. And you see these new varieties coming into the mix. You have later varieties like Autumn Crisp that are doing really well because it expands the market window the other way. And so you have attention to both geography and variety, to kind of maximize that market window, get a consistent production throughout, and avoid these kind of peaks and troughs. That you can get higher price. Avocados, I will say, I can't say so much now. I'm writing a little bit more about what's going on in Peru. I mean, obviously they're having trouble, and this is a result of El Niño again. They're not getting the sizes. The volumes have been down. But avocados, I think the whole industry, like if you look at the Hass Avocado Board or California Avocado, I think, is it Commission or Board, also the South African Avocados Grower Association, that there's a lot of data and it's very public in the avocado industry. And I think that really helps. And we just don't see quite the same level of coordination. I mean, I know this year with Sati and Provid, and also ASOX, they've been, issuing these joint reports for Southern Hemisphere grapes, but those have been very private, right? They haven't been putting those out there on the web. So when it comes to kind of transparency, avocados, seem to be leading the way, and I'd really like to see other crops kind of move in that direction, because we'd be able to pick up on these trends better.
And when you look at these trends, do you see a problem coming in the future in terms of new plantings? Like, for instance, like you've mentioned, Autumn Crisp. Autumn Crisp is a fantastic
It's
grape.
Exploding too.
It's exploding. So to a point where you think, is that going to be the only white grape on the market in 2 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's still appetite for it because the Autumn Crisp prices are very high. Of course, you have lots of new plantings coming in, so we're not seeing the volumes yet, right? Because I mean, what's amazing about Autumn Crisp too is that it's ready in such a short period of time. Your return on investment, the time to the return is a lot shorter. So it's really revolutionary. The Asian market really likes Autumn Crisp. These big round berries.
Everybody loves it. It's an amazing.
It's a good tasting grape. I mean, I have to be honest. But I do wonder. And also the management of the grape is a little more tricky, right? They need more support from Sunworld because growers are used to things like Sweet Glow, where it's just really easy to manage. So you need to be very careful about how you're doing pruning. and thinning, having the right fruit load. I know a lot of growers want to keep more load, but then they're not going to get the bricks that they need. And then they might not even be able to sell under the label Autumn Crisp. And then, of course, the investment isn't returned. So I would say, yeah, we're seeing varietal replacement, but I see more and more grapes going into the market, and there's going to need to be some differentiator on quality. And yeah,
I think Sunworld is doing an amazing job with the fact that they've branded Autumn Crisp, and their Sable, and now the new Ruby Rush. The way that they've done that, they've really gone in and focused hard on the branding.
Yeah, no, that's true. And we've also seen, just like an ag, like the growers, a lot of private equity go into these genetics companies. Like the Swedish pension fund owns a big part of Bloom Fresh, right? And then the other part is AM Fresh. So we're actually seeing, in the Nordics, money going in, right? Because they see the high returns, or at least returns that are decoupled from other assets, like I was saying. And also, you see more private equity going into Sunworld. I mean, these used to just be, a few guys experimenting with crossbreeding out in California, right? Like IFG and Sunworld. And these companies are transforming, right? And I think there's a lot of pressure, at least with Sunworld. Once you get private equity in the mix, you need to grow. That asset needs to then be, growing so it can be sold at a higher price. And so I think they're getting pressure also now from above to expand planted area so they can expand the royalties that they're taking in. And But couldn't that be detrimental to them in the long run? Potentially, right, if they fled the market. But I'm sure they're thinking about these things, and they haven't seen a saturation for Autumn Crisp. I mean, I'll say with Autumn Crisp, it's the only, at least in Peru, the only one of the new varieties that's shipping in large volumes to China. And we just don't know how much appetite or how much volume that market can absorb yet, I don't think. I mean, China's still buying a lot of Red Globe, for example. But if we could see an Autumn Crisp that's red, right? Or I know there's Sable Seedless and Midnight Beauty and these other ones that aren't really quite at the level of Autumn Crisp when it comes to volumes. But if we saw, a grape that could replace that, and then it's suddenly, there's a lot more potential there. But
China's traditionally been a good black grape market as well, from what I understand.
So you mean like shipping black grapes? Yeah.
Yes. Louise, please correct me if I'm wrong. Am I
black and yes, they've always liked red grapes. Very much the red grape with a kind of pink, which is why they love Red Globe so much. I mean, and that's still seeded, but they still take it because of the size and the color. Yeah. What's also interesting is we see with the growers in our area that there's a very large push from supermarkets and these people to commoditize grapes, bring them in without any label of what variety they are. And then you see somebody like Sunworld going in the opposite direction, putting brands to the different varieties. So these are opposing forces. And I mean, they need to push hard to actually get the consumer to know these brands and actually allow supermarkets to market them according to the brand. So that's another trend which is very interesting to see.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important, this kind of product differentiation, and going back to that theme of quality too, right? That you're not just buying any green grapes or white grapes, they're Autumn Crisp grapes. And so I think, these growers, as there's more and more volumes over wider and wider windows, are trying to differentiate. And I think that the genetics companies or the breeders are doing a really good job of helping the growers differentiate. They're kind of doing that work for them, reaching out to the retailers and all of that. One interesting thing I've noticed, at least looking at the grapes coming out of Peru, that the old IFG and SNFL varieties are going almost entirely to the United States. Whereas you see the Autumn Crisp going to China. And is that a result of marketing and relationships with the retailers that Sunworld, has built up in Asia, that, Bloom hasn't done yet? I'm not sure. But yeah, Louise, I totally agree that this is very important.
And it's
new.
Yes, yeah.
It's not that new. It's been around for quite a few years already. But yeah, it's lately that they've been pushing on the branding part heavily. And in terms of stats from grapes and things to the UK and the EU, which is traditionally a South African market.
Yeah. So I actually, I have a bigger gap when it comes to that. I mean, I know South Africa's main trading partner when it comes to grapes is Europe. I know, there is some disruption with India that's kind of in your window to issues in the Red Sea and Houthi rebels attacking cargo ships. And so they, had the longer route. But grapes have only been growing in India, so I imagine that's putting some pressure on South African grapes. You guys had a great year, I know. So at least top 2 out of the past 5 from the stats that I've seen publicly. I'm not talking about the numbers from Sati; they haven't been put out yet. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that when because of kind of global teleconnections with climate and things like that, and El Niño, Southern Oscillation, you kind of get drier conditions in South Africa when it's wetter and warmer in Peru. And so that might have been to your favor this year, which is maybe a contributor to the higher production. I'm not sure. Or if that was maybe a challenge to be overcome. I do know South Africa has been having a lot of problems with its port in Cape Town. And it's been interesting to see the port open up in Windhoek in Namibia, because you have some grapes coming out of there as well. But yeah, it seems like with South Africa that you guys had a really good year, but then trouble with logistics. Well,
we're very positive, because just after the election now, that it looks like there's some big movements happening in our internal politics. That could bring forward a lot of positive change, especially in terms of our logistics nightmare that we've got. So we've not heard anything. We are just being very optimistic as to what could be happening.
Yeah, and I also know with electricity supply. I mean, I don't know if it was this season and cold storage. I mean, that's another issue. The electricity infrastructure and I mean, there's a lot of things that are required on the government end to make sure that a cold chain can exist to ship fresh fruit effectively. And, we also see public infrastructure like in Peru too, around irrigation and supply there, that you need to make sure, you have government adequately investing to ensure that there are water supplies to grow the grapes, because that's beyond what any one grower can do or afford.
It's yes, indeed. It's very, very interesting. And looking at the way your company pulls together the stats, the weather, the trends, and we can only imagine that this can be very, very valuable to growers. So thanks so much, and thanks for chatting to us and explaining what you do. And we'll definitely watch what you're doing, and let's see where it goes.
Cool. Thanks so much, Louise and Dewald. Very nice to speak with you.
No, we've got a closing tradition where we get a question from the previous guy for the next person, and it's a totally random. It's a total random question, and we're going to get one from you as well. So
okay, I have to start thinking. Yeah.
The question was, do you prefer a book or a tablet when you are reading?
Oh. I still read books, physical paper books. Yeah.
It's good. It's good to hear. The publishers will love you.
Yeah, right. Print media. Go print media.
There you go.
That comes from somebody that works in tech every day.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Louise?
No, I was just going to say we'll wrap now, but don't leave yet, because we'll chat to you once we're done.
Okay, sure. Yeah. But do you need my question, or that's post?
No.
Let's post because
we'll chat that.
we don't want them to know where it's coming from.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us. It's been incredibly interesting. And I do think we'll chat to you again in time to come and hear how things have moved on. But thanks so much.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Dewald.